Okay, in this video I'm going to show you how to use Curry8, but a couple of things to keep in mind. First, you should power the amplifier before you boot up the recording computer. If you don't power the amplifier before you boot up the recording computer, it's possible it won't recognize the amplifier. I'll show you how to deal with that situation if it does arise, but you can minimize that if you just turn on the power first before you turn on the recording computer. The other thing is you should plug in the cap. Check the other videos, but you're going to make sure that you pull the feet forward as you're plugging the cap in, like in this picture. Feel the ground, FP1 and the left reference electrode with gel. You're going to attach the reference electrode as well, and then you're going to work the left reference first. But now when you start doing this, you're ready to check impedance. And remember, impedance check is going to measure the impedance between your reference electrode and all the other electrodes in the array. So that's the value that you're seeing. And impedance comes from a layer of oil and dead skin cells on the surface of one's skin. So the gel and working the gel in with the swab will lower that impedance. So that's why you have to attach the reference electrode, attach the ground, and have another point of reference to begin to even check the impedance, because you're going to need that before you can even begin. Okay, so what you would do is you would launch Curry8, and when you launch Curry8, the screen's going to come up like this, and you're going to start an acquisition. So you're going to click on Start an Acquisition, and it's going to try to connect to the amplifier. And as you can see here, I didn't turn on the computer. This is actually good. I didn't turn on the computer before I turned on the power to the amp. So you can see that we have the new amps is appearing. That's not good. That's not what we want. So we're going to search for the network amps. It's going to find an amplifier, and it's going to be the Grail. So if you start up the amplifier first, this will probably automatically appear and you won't have to change anything. You want to make sure it says the Grail, has the ERPLab configuration, and now you're ready to start the amplifier. So then you just click Start Amplifier, and it's going to start running, and it's connected. Now nobody's hooked up right now, so it's going to look really bad in terms of the EEG. You'll also notice on the screen here that it says it's not recording. That's fine, that's good. You're doing the impedance check. So to do the impedance check, you're going to switch over here and switch to impedance, and that will give you this full screen showing you all the electrodes. And right now nobody's hooked up, so it's a very high impedance reading. So what you're going to do is you're going to start to work FP1 electrode, and you'll see this impedance here start to lower. The number will get lower and the color will change. As you get lower, if you see the scale down here, as you get closer to our target goal of 5 kilo ohms, so when you're at 5 kilo ohms, it'll be pretty much blue in the box. So anything less than 5 kilo ohms is acceptable. We usually try to shoot for a little bit lower than that, just so the preparation during recording is undisturbed and your impedances are good throughout the session. But anything less than 5 kilo ohms is good. So you want to work those down to 5 kilo ohms. Spend some time on your reference electrode, because it'll make all of these impedances a little bit lower, because remember that left reference electrode is one electrode skin junction that's in every one of these equations. Now the only exception to this are your ocular channels. So you have VEOG, which is above and below the eye, and horizontal electrooculogram, which is on the left and the right side of the eye. If you notice, there's two impedance measures. So these impedance values will drop once you start working them relative to one another. So this one is the upper electrode. So the one on the left is the upper electrode. The one on the right is the lower electrode. The one on the left is the left HEOG electrode. The one on the right is the right HEOG electrode. You want them both to be down below our threshold of 5 kilo ohms. So that's the only trick for this. The rest of them are pretty straightforward. But since there's two in this particular connection, we record what's called a bipolar measure. So that's VEOG upper relative to bottom to lower, and HEOG left relative to right while we're recording online. So we get two different measures. Now the only other thing to keep in mind is that M2 is your right reference electrode. So that's the one that's separate from the cap that we attach separately for that. So that's how you check impedance. Now when you're done checking impedance and you want to record, you just click this off. Now this won't come up if you have good impedance. This is only because I have nobody hooked up here and it's high threshold. So if you see this message, you've made a mistake somewhere and you need to go back and check your impedances. But we're going to keep the channels. You'll still see it's not recording. So you would just leave it like this. You're going to let it run for a little bit. Make sure it looks good. You'll give the subject their instructions, and then they start the program. And when they start the program, it'll start recording automatically. It'll automatically name the data based on the previous subject, so it increments the subject to the next subject number. So if we've just recorded subject 105, the next subject would be 106. So that's how you would do impedance check. You want to make sure you're on this screen before you give them the cue to begin recording. Now, one other little thing. So like if in rare circumstances, if you have somebody who discontinues and they've already completed the consent form. So if somebody comes in and they don't complete the consent form, you find out right away that they're not eligible to participate in the study. You would just dismiss them. We would reuse that subject number. So let's say they come in as subject 106. You find out that they have sensitive skin, and you decide not to collect data from them. If they haven't signed the consent form, then we can still reuse subject number 106. So the next subject would do that. Let's suppose under the same scenario, subject 106 comes in, they sign all the consent form, they think they're fine with everything, you start to put the cap on them and they start to feel bad and they decide to discontinue. Well, in that case, we need to record some junk data so that the next session has the proper subject number. So we would start everything like you would ordinarily. You don't have to have anybody hooked up. And you have somebody go in and start the recording. So you're at this stage, they would start the program and it would start the recording. All they need to do is a few trials, and that will create a data file. And then what you would do is to stop the recording. So this message would disappear, you'd be recording, is you just click on stop here. And so what that would do is that would create a fake data file so that the next session, subject 107, when they come in, their data file will be automatically renumbered. So this is detailed in the lab manual, but that's another thing is you could manually, that's the only time you're going to manually stop recording is if you're creating some fake data for that particular situation. So let me close this and I'll show you where everything is stored. So everything, all the EEG data is stored in our ERPLab EEG data directory. So you can see we've already collected some subjects here. So like the next subject to be automatically numbered is 117. So if you have somebody who discontinues the study, we need to create fake data so that the numbers go along with the paperwork. They match the paperwork. So that's how you use Curry8 to do an impedance check and create some fake data.